Welcome to Iron and Ceramite, Librarius Omnis, where we explore the depths of the Black Library.
Hi guys, welcome to Iron and Ceramite present Librarius Omnis. This series is our book club where we're aiming to review the whole of the Black Library. I know that's a massive task, but we're going to give it a crack anyway. Today I'm joined by Shane and we're going to start big and dive into the Horus Heresy.
It is a big start. It's definitely, if we're going to start anywhere, and why not start with big ambitions, right?
Exactly. I mean, I haven't read the whole Heresy yet. I'm only really scratching the surface. I'm about 10 books in. I think you might just be ahead of me.
I am just, but as I said, I'm cheating a little bit, and I take the audiobook route, which may be heresy to some, but I go down that road because it's also something really good to listen to while you're painting, because you can really zone into it. So yeah, I've gone the audiobook route, but I'm currently working my way through book 12, which is the one on the Thousand Suns.
Okay, so you're 2 or 3 ahead of me. I'm halfway through Mechanicum at the minute.
Yeah, Mechanicum is as I said, it's a slightly different tact. It's a bit again, I mean, they all have their own different density, but Mechanicum is one that it's got some really interesting parts in it, but it's also got some bits that may take a bit to get through.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, but it's taking me longer because I'm doing good old hard copy.
Yeah,
making my way through because I like to collect things, and I've got 19 books of the Heresy behind me, but I'm not quite there yet.
No, there's a lot to get through, right? A lot to get through.
So obviously, before we go further, we'll give a spoiler warning because we'll be talking about each book, one book per episode, and we'll go into quite a bit of detail. So if you don't want to know what happens, maybe read the books, then come back to this. Or if you just want to join us for a bit of a chat, then stick around and give us your opinions as well. Because we're both, I think, big fans of the series so far, of what we have read.
Yeah.
And I know that as you go on, opinion massively divides, as I found out, book to book.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Is people's opinions on the books really, really alter. It also depends, some of it comes down to what factions you like, which authors you like, how you like. As I said, I'm a Space Wolves player, but having read what I've read or listened to what I've read so far of the Thousand Suns, you do feel a bit sorry for it. You do start feeling a little bit for it, and I'm like, well, hang on, should I? So there's a lot of mixed emotions that you get when you get through the books. But as I said, starting off with the big one, the one that kicks us into it, Horus Rising. What better place to start?
Exactly. And the other real thing is, if you get into Warhammer, you need to read the Heresy to understand the memes.
That's true.
Because Magnus did nothing wrong, apparently, but I don't know yet because I ain't that far ahead.
Yeah, well, it's coming around the corner. But I suppose the other thing is, it depends how you treat it. Like, I'm like a bit of a lore hound for all things 40k, which I think a lot of people are. And before I even got into the books, I was watching YouTube videos, I was reading wikis about it. I remember, back when we all commuted into work, spending several commutes just going through reading up on every Primarch via the 40k Lexicanum wiki. And so I'd read so much about all of them before I jumped into the Heresy that it was kind of, I knew what was going to happen. I knew the beats, and then actually reading it yourself in the books was really good. So I think it depends, there's multiple different approaches to it. So you might know all of the background or what's happened with various Primarchs and stuff like that, but it's still worth reading the actual source material, because it gives you so much more that you can't get, from YouTube or reading it yourself on the wikis, because it doesn't give you the full depth. But if that's where you start, that's fine. I mean, that's where I started. It all gives you a great basis.
Yeah. When I was getting into it, Tom sent me loads of YouTube videos, which I sort of plowed through, and then it was like, oh well, here's a book series. So I sort of held off because I knew I was going to read them, and I didn't want to get too spoiled. So I sort of have half an idea of what's going on, but some of it's just sort of bits that I've caught in videos or what people have told me. That I'm like, nope, don't tell me. I'm reading the books. No. So really, we'll get into the first book then. So, but before we go, so the Horus Heresy is obviously what sets up the current 40k universe, but it's set in 30k lore, and it is the rise and fall of the War Master Horus, the betrayal against the Emperor, and everything that happens in between. I think that's as quick of a summary as you could give. 60 books worth of lore?
Yeah, 60 and growing. I think the other thing that it's interesting. So I mean, you're quite right with the Heresy as what it actually is. It sets it all up, creates the the palette of which the grim dark is painted on for 40k, and all of the lore that goes into the Emperor, and the fact that he's like the corpse king on his golden throne, and all of these various memes and bits and pieces that come from this entire sort of pivotal act that really, given the span of time that the the Warhammer canon lasts, is really a short period of time, but it's so pivotal to the story that's why you can play the game, you can get into it without knowing any of it and just read or get into where it stands now, but this gives you the it just allows you to get more of the richness of the overall setting. And then I think the other piece that's quite interesting is something that Games Workshop always say, is that everything is canon, which is quite interesting, because it just means that it gives them, there's no retcons. They can have the ability to redo or remake, because everyone is a unreliable narrator. So it's all taken from perspectives of different people, different places, and it can all change. Like one of the bits I said I haven't got to it yet because I haven't got to the end of the series, but when I was younger, like I bought the Horus Heresy board game before the very early days of Games Workshop in one of their sales, and it just had like a tiny, in the rule booklet, it had a tiny bit of copy that it described the final fight aboard the Vengeful Spirit. I won't go into too much detail. You can find it online and places like that. But Games Workshop and the Black Library are always changing, like who turns up in that fight and how it transpires. And so I'm I don't want to read ahead, but I'm waiting to get to that part to see what they actually do with it, because as I said, it's something that's changed, but it doesn't matter because everything and nothing is canon. So it's that may seem daunting, but actually it makes it enjoyable because it means anyone can contribute to the lore.
And that's it. And we sort of have the end result from where we are anyway, but we don't know exactly what led to that or what happened there. So hopefully by the time we catch up, there might be actually a few more answers that we can go into by the time we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it's just trying to get through all the books, right?
Yeah, and that is the aim of our new series that we're doing today.
Indeed.
So we'll get on to the book. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking about how much we want to read all the other ones. So this one, Horus Rising, book 1 of the Horus Heresy. And the first thing I would say is I was actually not sure what I was expecting going in. I assumed that we would be following Horus and the story would be from his perspective, but it's completely not what I expected. And it's a trend throughout the books, really. You follow a lot of not side characters, but actual characters and their journey with the Primarchs. And in this one, it's Garvel Loken. He's probably the main character of the book.
Yeah.
And it's sort of his rise within the Lunar Wolves. And the ascension from just captain to the inner circle, or the Moonival.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's like a pivotal point in Horus's rise. And I think what's interesting, and you're right, is a big theme, is that, and I don't know if this changes when you get to the books that are maybe more about the Primarchs, a bit like midway through the series, which I haven't got to yet. It's very, you don't hear a lot from Horus. Like you hear conversations, you hear a lot of conversations around him. You hear, like as you said, that the Mournival and some key figures that go on to become, right now we're at the start of a lot of their narrative journey. So you've got Garviel, you've got Ezekiel, Abaddon, you've got Aximand and Tagadan, who form like the four kind of, well, it was the Mournival, that inner circle of advisors for Horus. Different, and I know we'll come into it, from the warrior lodges, but still similar, still something that would one of the I'm jumping about timelines here, but one of the reasons that you get the Codex Astartes written by Gilliman in the first place is to stop this type of activity. And not everyone in the Legion, and like Garviel was a good example, they're not all on board with these lodges and these sort of systems that are set up within the Legion. And it's quite interesting because you've got Horus, who you would expect to be center, and he is center to the plots, but you don't actually hear a lot from him, which is interesting because he's only just ascended to War Master. So he's only been in the post for a short period of time. He's dealing with a lot of conflicting bits and pieces from his brothers, whether or not they should have been War Master, various bits and pieces like that are going on, and how he's got this burden that he feels like he has to push forward and kind of own this pressure that's come from the Emperor retiring from the Great Crusade. And that kind of sets the scene for him to make the decisions, but you don't actually, you only know about a lot of this through the conversations and the advice that the Mournival provide, and what the Wolves get up to in that regard.
And you obviously have the introduction of all the remembrances, who just normal humans, basically the paparazzi, and journalists getting tagged along, which again, not everybody likes. Not everyone's on board with them sticking their nose into Astartes' business. But they're there to document the war, and they do that pretty well. And I think it also gives that extra layer of a human perspective, because it's so layered, because you have the humans going in, surrounded by these giant Astartes that they're just in awe of. And then you follow the Astartes like Garviel, and then a Primarch walks in who's even bigger. And then you've got these gods of men are worshipping, well, more gods of men, but they're not worshipping because that's not allowed.
Not allowed. None of that. It is interesting because I suppose that's one of the criticisms that's come, I guess, for all media around 40k is the how relatable the characters are. Like it's like I think we talked about it in the last podcast. Was that, like, some of the games and media like that, you want to play as guardsmen, you want to play as like the Imperial Guard, because they're human, whereas the Astartes are so Space Marines are so much bigger than that. I think it's interesting how one of the themes that runs through this book, but also I think pervades throughout the series, or at least has so far, is that separation between the Space Marine and the human, and their relationship between the two. Like, some Space Marines, some chapters to a degree, do see themselves as above humans, whereas others are much more about that protection of them. And you kind of, Garviel Loken is definitely one of those that has like welcomed the remembrances into kind of the crusade, and sees their use and sees how he is a servant of mankind. Whereas you have others like Ezekiel and Aximand, who are much more, they're there to battle, they're there to win wars, and
keep your nose out.
Exactly. And there's maybe little hints that there's concern about what's going to happen once the wars are won. What's the role of a Space Marine if you don't have any wars to fight?
Yeah, exactly. So jumping back into the start of the book, I was quite surprised because it starts off, I was there the day that Horus slew the Emperor, and I was like, book one already, that's weird. That's not what I was expecting at all. But it sort of brings in Loken's rise from captain to inner circle, because they've arrived at the planet. They had peace negotiations with the false Imperium, the false Emperor on this planet, but they very cleverly don't explain it at first. where they're there and they have peace talks, and one of the original Mournival members goes down to the planet, but he's killed in a betrayal apparently, which then starts the war, because he was Horus's closest son, I believe, at the time.
Yep.
Which obviously upsets them. And then as a result of the battle that they go into, that sends Loken into the Mournival through his actions on the planet.
Yep. And that really is like part one, isn't it? That's like where it kind of encapsulates that. I think that's it anyway, isn't it? That's the first act, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it was strange because, like I said before, I wasn't not knowing what to expect and thinking, well, they're already starting at Horus slaying the Emperor. Maybe we're going to jump all the way back from there and build back up to the excitement. But no, obviously it comes quite clear that this is a Force Imperium. They've got their own ideals that don't match with the Emperor of Mankind's orders to assimilate all of mankind into one sort of Unitarium.
Yeah.
And it's the first example of, well, no, we don't want to do what you want to tell us. You've just turned up here. You can't tell us what to do. And then finding out actually the Astartes can tell you what to do, or they're going to force it upon you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of, definitely, there's a couple of bits that it sets up, really, isn't there? So there's the first one that, so first of all, one of the things we're starting with this book and with the heresy right here in this is that, for example, you only get that reference of, killing the Emperor as being a big import if you know some of the lore anyway. If you didn't know that, you'd be like, oh, okay, right, what? Like, and that's one of the things with the heresy is if you're jumping in fresh, you may find it quite daunting or which is why, as I said, for me, I'd read a lot of lore first, so I kind of knew what was going on anyway. I know you John, you went into Eisenhorn first, which is a slightly different series. So we won't go into that now. Like, I'm sure that will be something we do later, right?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. That's the reason I'm here. Eisenhorn had me hooked, but that is a video for another day.
But it's just that you said, spoiler alert, that bit at the beginning where they're like, I was there when slew the Emperor, is like, as you said, it's a full start, but sets up that there's a lot of payoff by knowing some of the backgrounds, so that you get moments like that. I think the other bit that's interesting is the, that, as you said, all that guy was, that Emperor, the false Emperor, whatever you want to call him, like this false start, as it were, it's a scattered, like the universe is loads of different planets. Huge. Mankind is scattered to loads of different ones, and then has all been disconnected. So the people on this world, like the system that they've gone into, as far as they know, this is the Emperor of mankind. This is the Emperor of their mankind. And as you said, these guys have just turned up. I think the original captain was Sejanus, who was like, I think slightly older than the other Astartes in the Mournival at the time, and definitely plays up as part of Horus's background, and he's not happy when he goes down, as they say, that they're crusades of compliance, or battles of compliance. Goes down, and I think it comes in other books. There's always a way they do it. Like there's they go and give them, you can shake my hand or you can't. Like if they don't shake the hand, then drop pods start falling. But I think it sets it up for that. Or what's quite interesting is that the Emperor of this Emperor and like his bodyguard, I can't remember what they're called the Invisibles. I think they're called the Invisibles. Yeah. They're like,
because they're called Invisibles because we couldn't see them.
Yes. But they're like, it's a mirror image to the Emperor and like his custodians.
Yeah.
And what you learn is that all of these planets and systems that were cut off and mankind separated, they were all cut off, but they all had technology and ways. So they all started at the same place with, and we can go into, deep lore here with the STCs, which are there to build things. So they have their own things like power armor, like custodians and stuff like that, but they're not super soldiers. They're just humans. and so they have their war of compliance, which was only ever going to go one way, and I don't think the book ever really dispels that. At that point, you get an idea that these lunar wolves are, you know, they are, as far as the military go, the crack troops.
They are top notch.
Yeah.
And then they essentially they do what they're there to do. They eventually do kill this emperor, and they're all celebrated for it. And obviously they don't quite conquer the planet in their first hit.
Mm-hmm.
Return back to return back to the ship, and that's where sort of the Moonville's really introduced. And like we say with Loken, they say, well, you've been chosen, you've been recommended, you're going to be our new member.
Mm-hmm.
And you still see the first sort of thing of, well, he's like, as much as he's honoured and wants to do it, he has that sort of, well, this is another secret club. I'm not into secret clubs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're here for. It's not honest. It's not truthful. It's not what the Emperor wants. But he's drawn in by the Brotherhood, and you really do get that build up of they really draw it out and make it such a big deal, where they have the little their tradition where they're out in the lake by candlelight, I think, or they light the lanterns, and they swear oaths to each other, which aren't official, but it's oaths of brotherhood. And it really sort of bonds them together and builds, I think. And it was like maybe the last time you really feel joy for them, or they feel joy and they're happy, and you feel like, wow, I don't see how things could go wrong, because they are bonded, and it sort of cements them as brothers. And I thought it was such a good sort of part of the book that I just felt, wow, it's good to see what these are going to do now. Maybe we're going to go on for a few books of let's just go and conquer the universe together. And really set them up for inevitably what's a horrific horrific fall.
The breakdown of that group is like pivotal to the kind of first 3 books of the Heresy. Like it's you know, you really go through all of it, and as you said, it is joyful in reading it and really feeling it, but then it kind of, it doesn't last long, because it's towards the end of that act, that first act in the book, as it were, that you already get introduced to you know, the nefarious powers that exist in the warp, and then how they might impact what's going to happen.
And that's then going back to finish the job, essentially, isn't it? They so Loken's first job at the Moonville is to act as sort of a voice for Horus, but pretending to be counselling him, and he's just being fed his lines by the others, and convincing the basically the other military leaders, the more human military leaders, that no, actually we need to go back down. You need to send the Astartes in to finish the job, because we're here to exterminate the people that won't join us, and that's what we're going to do. And he earns his place quickly, and earns the right to go back down to the planet. And like you say, that's where things start going quite wrong. So they're heading back down. But before they do, that's where we first get a look at Oath of the Moment, which explained to me why these massive space marines run around with bits of paper waxed to their armor.
That's very true. Because you're right. That's even something I'd never clocked until I'd read this book. And then was like, okay, now I've got it. Now I know why they've got the seals all over the power armor.
Because looking at it, you think, I don't understand what you're doing. But then going back to, as much as they say we don't follow superstitions and stuff, we don't believe in it, it just sort of the conflicting information of, well, actually, we swear an oath that we're going to finish what we started, or this is the battle we're going to concentrate on. I swear that I'm going to get it done. Bit of parchment on the arm, wax it on, and they get sworn by their brothers, essentially. And it is a big moment. And that's when you get some of the remembrancers get to witness that and realize, wow, like, for these big godlike men, that they still sort of have emotion and take this stuff seriously. And it isn't just or war is their religion, and this is what they do to prepare.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what was interesting as well is that bit where they get Loken to effectively or publicly disagree with Horus, but it's all staged.
Yeah,
it's kind of it shows you. I think it's put in intentionally to kind of show you Horus's mindset and how he, this is why he's the War Master now. This is why he's like the strategic head of the Crusade, because he knows that he needs to pull these little tricks and manipulate people to a degree to get them to get the outcome that he wants. Because Horus ultimately wants the Astartes to go back down and, crush the rebellion and get it done. But he also knows that he can't be the one to say, let's do this. So he uses his Mournival to get there. And Loken is the figurehead that he uses at this particular point.
And that's it. He's a political genius, and and that's why essentially he was picked to be War Master, because he is the War Master. He wants war, but he has to sort of pretend that he doesn't. Yeah. And have other people think that their ideas, or it's their idea, or their opinion really does matter. But at the end of the day, he could turn around and say, "Well, I'm going to do it," but you might as well have a happy team behind you. Absolutely. And so eventually they head back down to the planet, and that's where things start going wrong, because they start hearing whispering over the radio.
Yeah.
What is it? I am Samus.
Samus.
Yeah. Start hearing those the whisperings on the planet, and they say, "Don't worry about it. It's just interference." And they find all the insurgents have gone to the mountains or the Whisperheads, and that's where they're heading. And I think that's where it starts. And essentially, they land back on the planet. And if they just left it alone and carried on, maybe we wouldn't be here. But it all goes horribly wrong now. Is it one of the sergeants?
Jubal.
That's it. Yeah.
Who is like him and Loken? There's a, they have some history. Like, he's commanded him. And he's part of his, he's part of his unit. So there's a history there between the two of them. And then when he has to confront him, who, again, we'll get into spoilers, you find out that he's clearly under some sort of demonic possession. But at this point in the storyline, the arc of 40K, none of the Space Marines know about chaos. Like, chaos powers don't exist. The warp is, it's something you travel through. It's the immaterium, but it's not. Chaos doesn't exist. These magical, this magical realm where these demons exist is not something that's widely known about. If it is known, it may be known by some of the Primarchs, and it may be, some of the Psychers and Librarians. But to your average, like someone like Loken, he has no idea about the warp or the powers of chaos. So this, one of his men effectively going a bit nuts and attacking him with, this strange sort of strength that he wouldn't normally expect from this particular Marine is
terrifying.
Absolutely, yeah. He's got no idea what's going on.
And that's it, isn't it? They're in the caves, and he's there whispering or muttering about Samus, and he says to some others, he's like, "Well, let's restrain him." And this guy turns around and kills a couple of the men there and then. 2 or 3 Astartes, kills them there and then. Yeah. And they sort of describe a bit later on that an Astartes killing Astartes is just not done. It's not heard of. It's completely like no one would have ever thought that was a possibility. Yeah. Which also sort of shows, in the end, the decisions that are made to turn traitor essentially are not small decisions. It isn't just a case of, well, we're going to war with you. It's something is broken, and this is the first sort of sliver of what is going on here, and it really does shock him. And not only does he do that, he basically turns into a demon, doesn't he? Yep. And runs amok, and that's where Loken obviously first gets his first taste of the power of the warp, and also the remembrances that are there. Cinderman, who is the spokesman for the War Master. He's the one who tells the other humans, yes, we're here to help. We'll make things better. Join our Imperium. And he's completely by the book. And this is the first sort of whack of an eye opener that he gets. That really makes him a key character later on.
Yeah, because he's one of he's a remembrance, but he's an iterator, which is they are, they're there to, it sounds, it's a bit like a cult, isn't it? Like he's there to push round the imperial truth and really drive forward this narrative that there's no religion, there's no gods, there's no, spirituality is nothing. Don't worry about any of that. The imperial truth is that one man leads the Imperium, leads mankind, and he is just a man. And like you hear about him said in the first act, and you get the feeling that he is unshakable in this belief that he is, that's exactly what he is. And what happens is he, with this chaos incursion, you can see it shocks a lot of what's happening, because he has read a lot. He's an educated person in this narrative, and he's aware of that potentially what it could be. But it suddenly starts him on a journey of changing the exact way that things are gonna progress for him.
And so that essentially shocks everybody to the core, but not too many people saw it, and most of the people that see it don't survive it. And that's when Loken really starts to start wondering, well, what's happened here, and speaks to Horus, and Horus sort of enlightens him and says, yeah, well, we sort of know about the warp. I was educated about it. The Emperor gave me a map of the stars, and I researched it, and he did know, or has an idea. I don't know if he knows to the full extent, but he just says, well, let's not spread this. Keep it to yourself. It didn't happen. There's no point in worrying about anyone. It was a freak incident. Let's keep it to ourselves. But obviously, Loken then really starts doing his research. Sinderman as well. They have a few talks and really start looking at. Essentially, he gives them a book of fairy tales to read. But there's a lot of truth in it, for similarities and things that happen going forward that open his eyes, and Loken really does think, well, there's more to this, and I don't think we should be quiet. But obviously he's got the split in his heart, really, of saying, well, I need to do what I'm told, but what I'm told isn't quite right, which again sets him apart from some of the others, I think. And really sets his destiny.
Absolutely.
But with that bit, that's the end of the first sort of acts, and then we move on to the lovely planet of murder.
Keeping the Black Library's tradition of naming things exactly what they are.
Exactly.
I think Act 1, like you can see, like what we've talked about so far, a lot happens. Like we've barreled through a load of stuff, and it's quite breakneck pace the first couple of books, and they keep going at this pace. So there's a lot to go through. But we get to murder.
I feel like murder really, it gives us a look of the Emperor's children, some of the heroes, and potentially quite a main villain coming up. But also just how I'll first look at someone that isn't Lunar Wolves, and they've turned up to murder to rescue some Blood Angels who have gone missing in action, and they find out, well, we sent a squad down, couldn't hear from them, sent another squad down, couldn't hear from them, and just trickle fed a group of Astartes after Astartes to their death, essentially. But they don't know that because they can't get down there to find out. So the Emperor's children copy this tactic and send small squad after small squad. And at this time, I think, is when the Lunar Wolves start making their way. And that's when you have the real action on murder of Sal and Lucius going on. And that's when the Lunar Wolves are slowly making their way, and Loken's doing a bit of research in the background. But then this sort of stands Sal as the hero he's going to be, and Lucius as the cocky show off who probably could be a hero if things didn't change, but he always wants more, and he is there for the kill, and he is there just to show off that he is the best swordsman going.
Yeah, he's very very brash, isn't he? Very.
He is,
and you kind of it's interesting because I knew about like where Lucius ends up. But if I'd read this book without knowing it, you would think he's, potentially like it's on the path for being one of the guys. Because although he's brash and you might not like instantly warm to him, he's still good. Like in this, ultimately he's fighting for the cause. He's fighting, with his brothers. He's obviously you've also got Eidolon, who is obviously he does come across as much more brash and a bit of an arse. But not to the same degree as Lucius. And you kind of wish to a point that if you could just shake Lucius a little bit and get him to be a bit more grounded, he'd be all right. But I suppose that's the nature of where he goes. And Tarvitz, it's all Tarvitz. He's because him and Loken have got history, haven't they?
I think they've battled before, so they have already a friendship there. I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but it's like the warriors' respect. So they're essentially brothers in arms. So when they eventually turn up, there's I'm glad to see you again. And they do say when the Lunar Wolves are getting ready to go, they're not going to like this because they're very proud. The Emperor's children, their whole thing are, we're very proud. And we're clean and tidy, and this is us.
Perfection.
And the Lunar Wolves are
perfection, aren't they?
Exactly. And the Lunar Wolves are the best warriors. So the Emperor's children aren't going to take it too kindly that you've come and dug them out of a hole that they don't believe they're in, when clearly they are.
Yes.
And that's Eidolon. He comes across as he's just he's in charge. He's a miserable git, and his word is law. And then you have like you say with Sal. He's a good warrior, but no one sees him as anything more than a captain.
Yeah.
They never think he's going to rise to anything, which is crazy because he's clearly one of the best people they have, or at least we get that perspective from here. And then, like you say, Lucius, he always seems to have Sal's back.
Yeah.
But he will always put himself first. He's like, he's my friend, but I'm better.
Yeah, exactly that. It's he is very much all after himself.
Yeah. And he's a career soldier who they see he has a future over Sal. And even though that doesn't really come into play too much, there was obviously that first ebb of tension between them.
Yeah, absolutely. What I think one of the bits that we've missed, I think, from this bit that's quite interesting about going down to the planet Murder is what's on the planet.
Well, exactly, and that's the key bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Giant metal spiders.
Yeah. So are they called mecha?
They are
mecha-arachnids.
Megarachnids. That's the one.
That's it. Megarachnids.
Yeah.
And I did read somewhere that there's a theory or a potential idea that these are like one of the early maybe disjointed or disconnected tendrils of a hive fleet, and they're actually Tyranids, but no one's seen a Tyranid at this point. So they're just called mecha-arachnids, big spiders, right?
Yeah.
But they could actually be Tyranids. But they're all on this planet. And I think it's the beacons that the Blood Angels originally followed. They didn't know what they were saying.
Yeah.
Turns out they were saying, "Stay away. There's a load of Tyranids here. There's a load of megarachnids."
And that's why the atmosphere is set up that you can't see what's in there because it's saying no one can get out, and you shouldn't be going in there.
Yeah.
It's essentially a planet prison, as we find out a bit later on the reason behind it.
That's it. And one of the reasons that they actually succeed or that they manage to undo the problems that I can't remember the name of the Blood Angels commander at the time that started drip feeding them in, and obviously Eidolon did the same thing, but there's these trees across the planet, and the previous squads have been they're like metal trees, and the previous squads of Marines have been effectively skewed on them. And Eidolon's willing to kind of leave the bodies up there. And Sol Tarvitz is he's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
We're going to bury him.
Yeah, and so he starts using charges to take down these metal trees, and it's actually these structures that are causing all of the communication problems and all sorts of battlefield issues that are happening on the planet Murder. And so by his act, he actually gets a lot of he gets a lot of credit from the Lunar Wolves, like Torgadon and people like that, because you get to learn a bit more about Torgadon, who's obviously part of the Mournival with Garviel Loken, and you see that they're two different warriors, because Torgadon is okay with lodges and with these kind of side things that are happening inside the chapter, but him and Loken become really good, like good friends, good battle brothers, as it were, and that kind of forms the two sides of the Mournival.
Yeah, he's the Joker, really, isn't he? He's got a sense of humor. He knows that Loken's very serious. He knows how to temper. He knows how to temper Abaddon's rage and keep him on track, because he just takes the mick out of him. He don't really care. He doesn't care what anyone thinks, and he knows, because when he turns up on the planet, he's like, "Oh, we're here to save you," and laughs about it, because he knows that they don't like it.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to rub it in. But and he does openly sort of embarrass Iliodon and say, thanks to Sal, that's why we're here, and sort of put praise on him, which doesn't rub him the right way.
No, he does not like that at all.
So the other thing I wanted to jump into, as you say, because there's so many characters and so hard to remember their names, and that's one thing I like about these books, is at the beginning they have the Dramatis Personae, which just is a list of the main characters in it. And forever, even now, I'm reading the books, I'm like, who the hell is that? Scroll back to the front and be like, so here you go. The chapter master of the Blood Angels is Raldoran. Well, I would have never remembered that. But you can go back to the beginning, and it's helpful, because all their names are hard enough to remember as it is, and the fact that you've got 30 main characters to worry about.
Yeah, definitely.
But that was just a little aside there. But you're right. Yeah, so they go down to Murder eventually.
Yeah.
Thanks to Sal's defiance, essentially, to say no, we're going to do the right thing, and they go down there, rescue the small squad of surviving Emperor's children who have been almost wiped out to a man. And they rescue him, take him back up, and regroup. And then we get our next big surprise when Sanguinius arrives. And again, I don't know if we quite touched on it, but the reverence that Astartes have for a Primarch, and they're just, I think as Loken said, he saw Sanguinius once before, and seeing him again up close and speaking to him was like one of the biggest honors. And they sort of, it's like the Dear Diary moment for them, where they just can't believe their luck that they get to be in the presence of a Primarch. And not only are they in the presence of their own Primarch, but there's a second one there, and it's just like that couldn't make their day anymore.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting as well, because it shows off the interplay between the Primarchs, because obviously these are, again, for those that don't know, there's obviously 20 Primarchs. They're all like gene engineered brothers, but there's this real sense of brotherhood between them. And some Primarchs have better relationships with others than you see. And Sanguinius and Horus are like really close. They're like they're favored brothers. They really like get on. There's a lot of love between them. They're really happy to see each other. And it's a big thing for them to be together, because they're stretched across this galactic imperium, fighting wars every corner of it. And so for them to, come across each other, it's a big moment.
Yeah, and they just can't believe it. And you have a bit of interaction between Horus and Sanguinius. Sanguinius meets the Mournival and talks them all up, and then they agree, right, we'll what do we need to do? Well, we do what we always do. We found an enemy. We can't even talk to this one, so let's go down there and wipe them out. And then they wage war for the next 6 months on murder and just completely level the place.
Yeah.
Which brings us, I believe, towards the last sort of.
It does. So the other bits that happen in that second act is obviously because of this planet, they find out that human civilization called the Interrex have been the ones that have effectively created this prison planet for these mecharadnids. So they obviously know, right, we've got to go and speak to these people because they're a human civilization. They need to be brought into the Imperial fold. So there's going to be a compliance thing there. The other thing that happens of note beyond the action on murder is that Loken discovers that Jubal, who was the guy that got possessed by the demon, is in one of the warrior lodges. Now, this isn't the same as the Mournival. This is independent lodges where rank doesn't matter. That anyone can speak at any level. That's the idea of them, to help foster this brotherhood. Some Marines are okay with it. Other Marines are not, because it's secrecy and it's something that's hidden. It's like, you're part of an exclusive club, and that shouldn't be the case in the chapter. Everyone's equal. And Loken has actually forbidden anyone under his command to be in one of these lodges, but some of them still are, and that shocks him, and that's something else that's happened in that kind of.
He was furious when he found out. And going back to the index at the front, his sort of sergeant and his buddy Nero Vipus. I think he's absolutely gutted when he finds out that Vipus is a member as well. And they were like, well, we didn't want to tell you because there's nothing wrong with it, but we don't want to get you angry.
Yeah, we know you don't like it, so we just didn't tell you.
because they say, well, come along, because the rest of the Mournival was like, come along, talk. They take him down there, and I think he goes armed, doesn't he, with a knife?
Yeah.
First, because he's really like, I'm gonna end it. I'm not having it. But then. Eventually he sort of thinks, well, if the rest of the Mournival are up for it, I'm already in one brotherhood.
Yeah.
What harm's another brotherhood going to do?
Yeah, that's it. So he kind of grudgingly accepts it.
Yeah.
Right? He does. He's not happy. He's not going to join. Like, he's not going to. He's stated he's not going to join these lodges, but he's not going to stop them.
Yeah.
As it were, right now he's got his misgivings about it, and that's kind of. That's I think the main thrust of that second act anyway, is really the brotherhood between Astartes through their action on murder, but also what's happening, behind back on the vengeful spirit, which is obviously the what's it, head cruiser or flagship, Horus's flagship.
Yeah. And they really sort of show, not only is he dealing with, I've just seen a demon, one of my brothers turn into a demon and kill other brothers, but now my other most trusted brothers are all in a secret club that I don't agree with. And not only is he researching what's going on in the real world, but now he's soul searching about what does it actually mean, what we're doing, what to be Astartes. I believe in this, and this is how I've been taught and how I've lived. And now he's got on two different fronts. His world sort of is the film's been pulled back over his eyes, so to speak. But so for what normally people describe as these books as like we said before, just bolter porn. It is really deep, and this is one of the things that draws me in. Just like we're only like 2/3 of the way through a book, and you've got so much you're dragged so much into these people's sort of lives. You don't know where it's going to go and how these people are going to react. Yeah,
really, to use the phrase, the bolter porn side of it, there hasn't been much in this book at this point. And there's engagements, there's battles, but it's not not what you get in some of the later ones. This is it's well structured, it's deep. but there is a lot going on. It's pretty breakneck, which is one of the reasons why you can finish it quickly, because you're never stopping. There's very little like slow paced or any issues like that. It's a very quick book to get through.
Yeah. And then so we come back up to the sort of final third.
Yeah.
And that's when they've had their lovely, glorious war on murder. Like they've loved it. Every bullet fired they've enjoyed. And then the Interrex turn up and say, "What have you done?"
Yeah.
Didn't you see the warnings?
Yeah.
Right, come with us. Let's talk about it. And they go to their home world.
They do. I think it's quite an interesting one, because you've got Horus at this point. He wants to seek this is his shrewd nature. He sees that, this is an advanced civilization. They've been able to build this prison planet. They've actually taken on a lot of like alien cultural traditions from other aliens and stuff like that. So, as far as the like the rest of the chapter are concerned, like Abaddon and Aximand, they're like, these are filthy Xenos. Like, this should just be a war of compliance. But Horus is actually like, no, they've got technology, they've built the civilization, there's stuff we can learn here. So let's go and negotiate. And I think you see like Abaddon and Eidolon that really oppose it. They're like, no, we shouldn't be talking to them. And you're kind of like, okay, there's stuff going on here. Like there's Horus wants to do it one way, the rest of the, these influential people in the chapter want to do it another way. And so they have lots of back and forth and discussions, and like Horus is apologetic, like he's like, hey, we didn't mean to do this, let's sit down and talk about it. And they get to a point where they're effectively sitting down, or they've been invited to the planet. I think they're unarmed.
Well, they go is it's peace talks essentially. They go, and like you say, Horus is really apologetic, and like he wants to learn from them. He's sorry that, well, we didn't think, we just do what we do, and he starts questioning. Well, we turn up. If we can talk to them and they agree, then great. If we can't talk to them, we'll just kill them anyway. And like you say, well, maybe that's not the way. And he apologizes, and Abaddon is furious. He's like, we've just waged a glorious war. We've lost brothers, and now you're saying sorry. Like that isn't what we do. But they do go down quite peacefully.
And because there's a couple of bits that I think are really interesting. So this is what we were talking about at the beginning about the pressure on Horus, is that you get the quote that the Emperor told to Horus before he made him War Master, or as he was making War Master, said, make no mistake, and those stars will be ours. And like Horus is literally taking that on as, I can't make any mistakes. Like that make no mistake part is something that he's really dug into, and is causing a huge weight to bear on his shoulders. And it's also that element. So he's got that element, and Horus sees the mistake that he made earlier was the death of Sejanus. He still is carrying that around as well, one of his favored sons, and that's because he didn't exhaust all of the possible negotiations that could have been done. And that's why with the Interrex, he's like, no, we're gonna do everything, even though it's creating this kind of atmosphere of insurrection behind the scenes with Eidolon and Abaddon, and they're like, they're not sure that's gonna be the way, but he gets them all on side after talking about this moment with the Emperor. And so they all go down, the War Masters
majority
entourage, they go down.
They trust him. They trust him to do the right thing. They don't agree with it, all of them. But I feel like, again, Loken's pretty keen to go with it and say, no, I agree. He sees the benefit of learning, and his eyes have already been opened twice to other things. So why not experience something else? And he seems to be the one who will think about the greater picture rather than just do what we always do. And he's wandering around, looking around I think it's a museum or a library, some of the technology that they hold for a while, and even talks to some of the guards.
That's it. I think he's talking with one particular guard, and they're as you said, they're wandering around, seeing all of these weapons of war and artifacts that the Interrex have picked up from these various alien cultures that they've kind of all joined in with, and it's at that point that this guard talks about chaos. And like, you know, he's saying like, oh, one of the reasons, or at least it's intimated that one of the reasons that, you know, we've been a bit distant, or, you know, we haven't been sure about you guys, is that we don't know whether you're tainted. And again, this is confusing for Loken, because he's like, well, hang on, like, you know, I've been told by Horus that maybe there's a little bit of a knocking around, but don't worry about it. And suddenly these people we've never spoken to before, the civilization, is talking about the taint of chaos. That becomes, you know, a big narrative throughout the rest of the series. But that's where the Interrex's concerns come from, is this potential, these human visitors, you know, that can they be trusted? Are they tainted by chaos? You know, are they going to bring damnation to our civilization? You know, it turns out that is going to be the case, but not the way that they're expecting it to happen.
And I think things end pretty quickly, because they have that conversation, and Loken's confusion comes across, and the Interrex sort of laugh and say, well, we were terrified of you. You don't even have a clue what's going on. But at the same time, the alarms start going off before they can really have a proper conversation. The Interrex takes a little message, and then just completely turns, and he said, no, I was right. We should fear you because you've stolen something. And then all hell breaks loose. The guard goes for Loken. They're attacking each other. I think he gives him the chance to surrender, and Loken's like, well, I'm not surrendering because I haven't done anything.
There's a lot of confusion and mayhem. At this point, no one, well, even we don't know what's happened. Like, something's gone down. You know, the Interrex think that one of the Astartes or part of the party has stolen an artifact. No one seems to know what's going on, at least none of the Lunar Wolves. And so there's a lot of confusion. Is it, you know, is this been a mistake? Is this just some sort of misunderstanding? But as you said, it basically all kicks off. And then you're back to a million pages a minute as this.
And they're all trying to evacuate, and Horus is saying, no, it's a mistake, it's a misunderstanding, nothing's happened, and he's trying to stay, and they're all getting shot, and they say, no, right, let's go. We tried, we failed. And Horus is, like you say, I can't make any mistakes, and he can just see it all falling apart around him, as he's essentially dragged kicking and screaming off the planet, and he's just like heartbroken and angry, and they eventually get out of there, and it sort of it ends in it doesn't really end in tragedy, but it's the beginning of the end of Horus's thought, well, we're going to do well, we're going to carry on in the Emperor's name, and his first sort of foray into being the War Master, just 2 planets in a row, doesn't end well at all.
No, and I don't think it happens in this book, but they don't wage the war of compliance against the Interrex yet, do they? It might be the next book.
I think that comes later, because this is just the escape from the planet. I think that you have quite a bit of a chase. It's like a race to the Millennium Falcon in a way, getting off the Death Star and getting out of there. Or is it heresy to talk about Star Wars when we're talking about Warhammer?
I think it's fine. I'll let you off.
And I think, and that's pretty much how this one sort of wraps up, with Loken talking to the Remembrancers. And they're saying, so what happened? What was stolen? And he says, we didn't steal anything.
It
wasn't us. And it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, I think.
It does. Well, that's the moment where you then, like as you said, you cut to someone that becomes incredibly pivotal in the 40k lore and narrative. You cut to the world bearer Erebus, who's he's been mentioned already in the book. Like he's there on like diplomatic missions with the Lunar Wolves, and obviously the word bearers. They're a legion that have got a mixed approach to compliance and how they're seen by the Emperor, and they definitely have their own vision on what should be happening. And you cut to him like deep in the vengeful spirit somewhere, looking at this this sword, the Anaphane, I believe it's called, that he's stolen from the Interrex. You don't know much about it other than the fact that it's almost like a living weapon. Potentially tainted, warp tainted, but as I said, we don't know anything.
I think that comes a little bit later, doesn't it?
Yeah, all we know is that it's a weapon that obviously the Interrex had guarded and didn't want to let slip. That was what was in their their vault. Was the idea was that these weapons were too powerful, and Erebus has made off with it. He's caused the fight to happen. He's caused it all to kick off, and he's done one, and obviously not told anyone about it. So you kind of you start, he's already, everything you read about in the first book, he's shady anyway. And this only further compounds the feeling that this guy is he's not good for what's going on.
No. And all we've really had with him so far through the book is he's just been there. He's been at the meetings. He's sort of at Horus's side, bit of an earworm, whisper here and there. But other than that, not too much. Other than the fact that Loken doesn't quite know why he doesn't like him. I think that's all you really get from this book. But the pure arseholery of Erebus hasn't been fully explored yet.
No, not yet. It comes.
Yeah.
It does get there.
Yeah. Well, I think that as far as I can think, we've covered majority of everything that happens in Horus Rising.
Yeah. That is it, because you do kind of, I think the first, I said we talked about it a little bit. The first three, at least the first three books are kind of, they work. I would always consider them almost a trilogy. Because they work so well together. So you are left on a kind of a very open point. I think what's interesting is that even though I think the first two books are definitely written by different authors, and we'll come into it when we get into False Gods, but you never feel like you're being told a completely different story.
No, I felt that reading False Gods and then Galaxy in Flames.
Yeah,
it is there. They are different authors. They're three different authors, but you don't feel that disconnect. I think the writing style is slightly different, but they they piece together really well.
And you don't feel they write the characters, dramatically differently. Like Lucius is Lucius all the way through. Yeah,
I definitely feel like either there was definitely some between the authors. This is how we're going to do this. Definitely at the start. Even where I am at the series, I feel like there's not too much has happened where I'm like, well, that doesn't tie into the universe that I know. I don't really know a lot. I know 9 books so far, and I'm still on number 9. So
I don't know. You'd be surprised. That's it's a chunky amount.
Yeah, we'll obviously get through it as we go and learn more and maybe change our opinions as we go.
I was going to say that the 9 you've read so far, and I know we've just done Horus Rising. We'll come into False Gods before. The 9 you've done so far. Yeah. Are there any that you're like, well, I'm not as keen on that one as opposed to any others?
There's nothing that I've read that I've gone, oh, that was terrible. I think the first real departure, and we'll get onto it more when we get there, from the main storyline is Descent of Angels, because that jumps way back in time. I think, and this is what I see, if you're thinking Horus Heresy, it's going to be this sort of timeline, and to jump back and not even really touch on the heresy or the events of the heresy, it's not jarring, but it's unexpected.
I agree with you. I think for me, of the first 9, that's the one that feels the biggest leap. I'm just said I've just finished Fallen Angels, which kind of picks up after Descent of Angels.
Yeah.
Not that you'd want to read them back to back, and it does pay off a lot of what you read in Descent.
Yeah.
But if you're just looking at that first 9, that Descent of Angels definitely feels like the first hump to get over, as it were.
I definitely think you've got to trust in the system. Trust in the Emperor's logic here. It's all going to pay off, and if it doesn't, then we'll just get angry about it later. But we're a long way away from that at the minute.
Indeed.
But yeah, I would say that was definitely the first one where it was a bit of a, well, this is different. I also think that Legion was very different as well, as if it was, that is a spy thriller to start with a sci-fi twist.
I think some of the things with Legion as well is like the people they add in, like what's his name, Grammaticus.
Yeah.
You know, they bring in these such wider elements that are probably going to pay off later on in the rest of the series, like Perpetuals and the Cabal, like these are bigger, wider things that actually just reading Legion, because you don't really get introduced that much to the Alpha Legion at all before this.
No,
and there's still like an enigma afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting book. It's definitely got a big change of pace to the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel as out of place as Descent did. But I think that might be the timelines.
Yeah. Cool. Right. So just to finish off then, from this first book, Horus Rising, what was the best bit, your best takeaway from it?
I think it's probably similar to yours. I liked the whole Mournival. I liked the setup of the brotherhood inside the chapter, or the head of the chapter, and I like the building of those 4 characters, like Loken, Torgadon, Aximand, and Ezekiel Abaddon. Like, regardless of what you do or don't know about what's going to happen to him in the future, it's a nice build to those 4 characters. So I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was it, wasn't it? It's the building. You know that it's not going to end well, but I wasn't expecting it. Not knowing anything about Warhammer and coming into it after only reading a few books, just the layers that are there.
Yeah.
And just sort of really, I mean, I don't know if it continues, but the heart behind it, I was quite pleasantly surprised with, and that's sort of what spurred me to keep going.
Yeah.
It was. I think that was a pleasant surprise that it wasn't just going to be a big Space Marine smashing things. So I was really, the Mourneville is probably the thing that encompasses. This is the highest high. You're probably not going to get that again, because it's all downhill from here in a good way.
No, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So we'll wrap up there then. And we will be back on the next episode where we'll go into False Gods. Yeah.
Continuing at breakneck speed at the start of the Heresy.
Exactly. So for now, then that's it. If you're not already, like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're Iron and Ceramite on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then obviously we're all painting models and building armies. I'm Falconite Eddie on Instagram, and Shane
Adepticus Mansfieldicus on Insta. You can see my badly painted minis, but it's all about getting better, right?
Exactly, and that's it. And then obviously you've got Dave and Tommy as well. If you go onto our Iron and Ceramite Instagram page, you'll find all 4 of us there. We've just put up a video of Tom doing a little demonstration of how to make your own homemade wet palette. So jump on there and get a lesson from Tom, and we'll have more content coming soon. So we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll see you later.
Absolutely. Bye.